All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And if you guys have registered for this and are registered just to get the recording, we will send this your way. And we will also be posting this on YouTube. So feel free to watch it anytime. This is going to be a presentation and a question answer session on 10 tips on how to holiday with children and babies. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll introduce you to our guest. My name is Kim, and I have created the Mommy Wrap, which is just a sweater wrap that you can wear with or without babies with all kinds of features. So if you guys are interested in learning more about that, obviously contact me. I want to introduce you to our guest, and this is Dr. Sharon Somek. She's a pediatrician and a mom of 4, and she has lots of wisdom to share with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over, and you can tell us about yourself, Sharon, and we can get on with it.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So just a quick little blurb about myself. I am a pediatrician who recently left practice to sort of full-time help parents with their parenting questions and concerns. And if you have any questions after this talk, you can feel free to email me, and my information will be at the end. Today, we're going to talk all about really how to travel with your kids. And this is a topic that I talk with clients about sometimes, especially around holidays. And holidays tend to bring about a lot of stress when they really are meant to be a happy time for families. And so I think that having a set of sort of tools and tips in your back pocket is helpful so that you can know what to expect and really try to enjoy the holidays and try to enjoy your children as much as you can. The first tip I have is to have realistic expectations. And so if you're going in expecting that the holiday is going to be perfect, the travel is going to be perfect, everything is going to be amazing, you're more likely to be disappointed, and you're more likely to get frustrated. And when we get frustrated, we all tend to take that out on people around us. And so it sort of sets the stage for a negative tone really throughout. And so if you can have a realistic expectation of what traveling with your infant or toddler is going to be like, or maybe you're going to end up having some delays, and you can anticipate that, then you're going to have a much smoother travel experience, and even your expectations for what the holiday is going to be like. And you may not be traveling far for your holidays. You may be just going around the corner to visit family, but still just knowing what to expect there is going to help you have a much better time. The second thing is to prepare yourself for the travel. So if you're traveling with young kids and you're going to be in the car for 2 hours, make sure you have stuff for them to do so that they're not asking you every 15 minutes, are we there yet? If you know that you have a toddler that's potty trained, plan out some potty rest stops in between, and know where you can have easy on and off so that you're not looking for a bathroom when it's going to be probably too late. Those little things are really helpful to know in advance, because it, like I said, it just makes it a smoother travel experience. And the same if you're traveling, by air travel or by train, just know what your experience is going to likely be like, and how to best prepare yourself for an enjoyable trip, really.
So I'm going to jump in here really quick, just from my experience. So one of the things that I always expected as a mom was, okay, I'm going to get the kids settled. They're going to eat their snacks. They're going to read their books. They're going to watch their iPads. And then I'm going to be able to just sit in the car and play on my phone and relax or read a book or something, right? No.
Right. It's very realistic.
So I have realistic expectations. Like, I need to expect that the entire time I'm in the car, I'm going to be working, especially if you have multiple kids like myself or like you. It's back in the day, it was easy to do that, but expectations to not be able to sit there and relax, probably not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it's true, really, not even just for the actual travel. I remember I think it was last year or the year before, we were on a trip to Mexico during the holidays, and my parents were with us, and we were a lot of young families with a lot of young kids. And I remember my dad looking around at some point and saying, I don't even understand why you guys are doing this to yourselves. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, we're having a great time. And he said, no, you guys are working so hard, all of you, and it's true. It's a lot of hard work, but just like my job is a lot of hard work, but I love doing it. That's something that if you can anticipate the things that are likely to go wrong and really expect that you're not going to just, put your feet up and relax because you have young kids, you can really make the most of enjoying your time with them.
Right.
So that's what I would say. And, having sort of things to do with them and taking advantage of that time. So if you're in the car with them and it's just, you guys are just your family driving somewhere, that's amazing quality time. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're taking a 4-hour drive, you have to be on the whole time. It's okay to let them watch a movie or do something that's more passive for some of the time. Right? But take advantage of that time, play some I Spy games, or, if you have older kids, it's obviously easier. If you have little kids, plan your trip around nap time so that they sleep some of it, and do the best you can to make the most of your schedule.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. And then, the thing I would say is really important would be to know what is going to be available to you. So if you're heading somewhere and when you get there, there's no crib and you didn't bring a pack and play, you're not going to be happy, right? So know what is there. Call the hotels ahead of time. See what they have that's kid friendly, and what activities do they have, if any, or if you're visiting family, what do they have in the house? Because it will likely determine what you need to bring with you so that everybody's happy. And I do think it's important, especially around the holidays, when you're traveling around the holidays, the focus should be on family time and making sure that it really is having the best experience possible.
Right.
I would definitely prepare for a difficult journey. I always say, expect the worst and hope for the best. Happen to be a very optimistic person, and I usually can find the good in almost everything. But I am a firm believer that if this idea of expectations can really set our mood. And that's why it's really has been the theme in these first four points, really, because it's such an important thing to really know what the possibilities of things going wrong are. So if you're traveling with a baby and you're going and meeting all this family, your baby might be cranky, and that could be a point of anxiety for you and for your family. I worked with a client a few months back, and they were traveling for a holiday to her parents. Now, of course, the baby already had a relationship with her parents, but there were other people there, and they weren't really prepared. The mom got very stressed out. They ended up leaving early, and it was not around the corner family, Everybody got upset. Her mom got upset that they left early. The baby was clearly feeding off of anxiety and got upset. And so we really worked together to plan out the next holiday and family gathering so that it would be much less stressful, and it's important to think about those things and to do that so that when your baby is not behaving the way you expect them to, because sometimes they do that, how you're going to likely handle it. And so that brings me to preparing as much as you can for these larger family gatherings. If you're going to be seeing cousins and aunts and uncles, and you have photos, or you can FaceTime with those people, and even just for a few minutes, familiarize your kids with them, then it could really help ease that transition when you get there. And then your baby already feels like it's someone they know. And books really with pictures of family members, if you can put together an album or make something on Shutterfly, it actually can be a great bedtime story. And then by the time you get to meeting these people in person, your baby already knows them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a really fun way to introduce your kids to your family.
Well, and it's awesome because nowadays, which is different from when we grew up, like I have photo albums, like actual 4x6s, sometimes 3x5s of family members that, my own mother had made photo albums for us. But now, we have FaceTime. Like that is so easy. So just being able to FaceTime with, sometimes like great grandparents can be scary to kids, but once they get to know them and they can recognize them and see them on FaceTime, not so scary anymore.
Yeah.
It's a win-win because it makes them feel happy and, doesn't make them feel so bad when the kids are scared of them for, being old.
Yeah. And I think one thing that causes parents not to go ahead and do that is because they're worried about the time commitment. But it really can just be for a few minutes, a few times, a week. You could be on FaceTime for 3 minutes with someone and it's a lot of time, and so it's just a matter of making the effort. And, it doesn't even have to be scheduled in advance. You try, you call. If they're free, great. If they're not, and you do the best you can so that when you meet face to face, it's not a new encounter.
Yeah, I like that.
So the other piece that's really important is to prepare your family for what your reactions might be if your kids are overwhelmed, right? And I think that this is important. For some reason, grandparents and sometimes, great aunts and uncles, they tend to get offended. It's almost like they forgot that kids are kids and they, kids are going to behave the way they're going to behave. And it's not always in our control. And so they get sensitive about it and they get offended pretty easily. So having that conversation ahead of time can make it so much less stressful when you're there, and just say, hey, we're coming for the holiday. We're really excited. But I want you to understand that, Johnny hasn't seen you in a while, and it might take him a little bit of time to get used to you and warm up. And it doesn't mean he doesn't love you. It just means that I don't know what to expect when he gets there. And I want you to know that that's a possibility.
Right. I did have a question that just came in, so I may jump in and ask it right now.
Sure.
This person, this mom, says that she struggles with setting boundaries with her family when it comes to the kids' routines around the holidays. She says, I know they do best when things are consistent, and so do I. Any tips for handling boundaries with the family, particularly around crazy holiday schedules?
Yeah. So I think that this is something that really is going to be individual for every family. It depends on how important your schedules are to you and how rigid you want to be, right? So I can give you an example from my own life. My family tends to do holidays on the later end. We actually tend to do a big family dinner once a week that's on the later end. And I am a stickler for bedtime routines and schedules every day of the week except that day, right? And oddly, our children have really gotten used to it. And on that day that they're staying up late, or if we're at a holiday and they're staying up late, they usually don't have a problem. But the next day, as you might imagine, they are not always the most pleasant. And I have taken that upon myself to say, you know what, it was my decision to allow them to stay up late. I'm okay with the fact that I'm going to have to deal with a little bit more crankiness the next day, or, a little bit of overtired behavior, because for me, that time that they're spending with their cousins or with my parents is so important that it's worth it. However, if you know that that's just going to make you not have a good time and in turn, everyone else not have a good time, I would be very upfront about it. And don't wait till the day of. A few days before, or even when you're agreeing to go somewhere, just say, listen, we're so excited to come. In order for us to have the best time possible with you, we're going to make sure that we get, Carolyn to bed at 7 o'clock. And I know that that means that she might have to miss some of the festivities, but that also means that I'm going to be able to be present for them because she's not going to be tired and overly cranky. And so again, you really want to look at the upside of things and put the blame on you. Don't make it seem like, oh, well, you chose too late a dinner time. If you're involved in the planning and you can help plan around that, great, but it's not always possible. And that's okay too. Just say, you know what, this is what we have to do for our kids. And this is how they're going to behave the best. And it's going to be best for me because I get to be with you then. If you have the opportunity to have some, an extra set of hands help you, great. Teach your mom how to do something or somebody else who's there. But when you're not in your element, your kids are going to want you. And so if what it means is that you need to put them to bed before guests arrive so that you can actually be there with everyone, then you do it. And when they get older and they're able to stay up later, then they'll be part of that experience. And it's really all about what it is that you feel is important for you guys at that moment.
Yeah. So one of the things that just in my own life that I because I struggle with that with, the kids being 5, 3, and 1 right now, is the bedtimes, especially for the 1-year-old, because if she's off, then she's up, during the night, and then she's off the next day. And I mean, we all know how it goes. It's just a domino effect.
Yes.
I just, as a mother, I have to be an advocate for my children. So, and as moms, we always know what's best, right? So, I mean, I just always say I have to do what's best for my kids. So, if we can move up the dinner an hour, that would be awesome. If we can't, we may have to leave early, but I'm just giving you a heads up so I don't hurt anybody's feelings. And
yeah, I mean,
I don't know if I'm hurting people's feelings by saying that or not, but I believe in what I know from what's best for my kids,
Yeah, I don't think you're hurting anybody's feelings by saying that. I think the other option is to travel with a pack and play in your car and say, you know what, I really want to enjoy this dinner, but it is a bit late. I'm going to put her to bed in the guest room. And then when we leave, I'll take her back home with me. And that's okay too.
That's a good idea.
I guess the idea is really to just think about all the options and don't assume that because your kids need to sleep, you need to leave, because there are alternatives, I mean, if your kids are really young and you really want to be a part of the holiday, get a babysitter, I mean, there's nothing, my sister, we were at a wedding, we were at a wedding over the summer and all the kids were invited. And my sister left her baby home with a babysitter because she said, I'm not going to have a good time. He's not going to have a good time. We're going to get a babysitter for him. And of course, my dad was a little upset, like, oh, but he won't be in the pictures. And she was like, it doesn't matter. We're going to all be miserable if he's at the party. Yeah. It's past his bedtime, And so think outside the box a little bit, be flexible. That's tip number 9. I think it's really important. That doesn't mean you have to change your whole life around, but where there is room for flexibility, try to be, and it just helps everybody enjoy the time together the most. And really you want to make the most of that time. You don't want to feel like dread that it's Thanksgiving and you're going to be seeing everyone and what it means. You want to be able to enjoy it, right? That's the whole point. The point is to have happy memories and do things in a way that makes everybody think fondly of those times.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. You have some good ideas for me.
Thanks. And then I think that one of the most important tips is to stay calm. I think our children 100% feed off of our anxiety. And in that story that I told you about the mom that left her mom's house for the holiday early, the baby, before they even got there, felt how anxious she was over going there. And so the truth is there was going to be very little likelihood that this baby wasn't going to be overwhelmed and cranky, because the mom was so overwhelmed and cranky, right? And the baby feels that. There are so many studies that show that babies feel our anxiety and they know how we feel. And if we are calm, their demeanor and their behavior is totally different. And so if you can really do the best you can, do whatever breathing exercises or meditation or whatever makes you happy to stay calm, take a bath. I don't care what it is, but do the best you can to stay as calm as possible. And remember that it's not going to be perfect. And that's okay. Nobody expects anything to be perfect, especially when you're with kids, but in general, you know? And I think that if you can remember that and really try to let go of that anxiety as much as you can, you will have such a much better time. And your baby will be so much more calm. Your children in general will be so much more calm that it will double how much better the time will be.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, like I said, I mean, we talked a little bit about sleep needs, but it is important to pay attention to their sleep needs, because overtired children and babies are not always fun to be around. And I think that that's a good tip also when you're traveling, right? If you can travel in such a way that allows them to sleep en route, then that's kind of nice, because then they're well rested when they arrive. If you're flying and you want to take an evening flight so that they sleep, or an early morning flight, which an early morning flight is harder on you, but at least it doesn't interrupt their sleep. I have done that. We've flown overseas from like on a 10-hour flight that was basically you're awake the entire time. I prefer to take night flights, even though it is a little bit more disruptive when you arrive. You're sleeping more of the flight, so the flight is easier. But for everybody, that decision might be different. And so think about the timing of when you're traveling and what your children's schedules are and what you're more likely to be happier with when you're making those plans.
I mean, the other thing is if you can afford it, I always pick the times regardless of the price of the plane ticket, because I'd rather have a good time, be relaxed, not be anxious, and pay more for a good timing flight than pay for the cheapest flight there is that's at a horrible time for my kids.
Yeah. And it's hard because traveling around the holidays can be so expensive from the get-go, but do the best you can. And again, if you know it's not going to be the optimal time, it's not the end of the world. You just have to be prepared for what to expect. And then, of course, have fun. So what to avoid when you're traveling and when you're visiting family for the holidays? So I would avoid trying to control everything. We touched on this a little bit, but you really are not going to be able to control everything unless you're hosting. And if you have young kids and you're hosting, good for you. I mean, I host and I have young kids, but my kids are already starting to get a little bit older. My youngest is 3, and it makes it a little bit easier. I think it's just, not everything is going to be in your control. Even if you can control most things, there are going to be things that are not in your control, and you have to be willing to sort of let go and roll with whatever comes at you. Try not to be too embarrassed if your kids are misbehaving in front of other people. Kids are kids. They don't always behave the way we want them to. And I think most people know that, right? So, if you're on an airplane and you have a child who's crying and somebody gives you a nasty look about it, too bad for them. Like, they're traveling during the holidays. They know there are going to be children on this flight, and it's just, I feel that it's not your job to try to keep your kids quiet so that everybody else can have a good flight. You're keeping your kids as calm and as happy as you can so that they can have a good flight and so that you can have a good flight. And if that means they're quiet and everybody can have a good flight, great. But if not, don't feel guilty about it. You're doing the best you can, and that's all you can do. And lastly, we talked about this already, but planning your travel time to avoid overtired children is really important.
Yeah, so I'm going to touch just on the guilt and embarrassment for the children crying or whining. I had 3 colic babies. So going to events was really tough. Like, I didn't want to bring my colic baby around everybody. I will never forget, we had like a family get together. I think it was actually over 4th of July. And I was in a bedroom cooped up the entire time with my baby crying because I didn't want to have anybody have to hear her screaming and crying. And everybody kept coming in, Kim, come out, come hang out with us. We don't care. And I just didn't believe it because I thought, oh no, nobody can handle this crying. And then, here I am years later, I'm around other colic babies or other children that are crying and whining. Doesn't even faze me because it's not my child, right? So when it's not your own child, it doesn't really bother you. And so I thought about that time and place. And I'm like, I missed out on an entire time with my family, cooped up in a bedroom because my child was crying. Well, she wasn't even really crying. I had her calm because I was walking around, but I could have been walking around and hanging out with my family at the same time as calming her. And, it's just one of those things that I regret because I missed out on that really fun day because I was too scared, that she was,
it would be bothersome.
Guilty, and I was embarrassed. And just people don't care. Like, if your baby's crying, they're probably will say, hey, give me a shot at calming down.
Yes.
So, and let them try.
Yes. And if you're traveling alone with your kids, that is something that I will say. People tend to be super nice when you're traveling alone with your kids. And it's okay to allow a nice stranger to help you out, right? To hold your bag while you pick up the baby and do something, or to it's okay, right? And I remember I flew overseas once. My oldest was 3 and was she almost 3? And my youngest was 4 months old. And guess what? At some point I had to go to the bathroom, right? And so, I maybe could take the baby with me to the bathroom, but I had to rely on people around me, and people were so nice. I couldn't have expected more kindness. And it was just, it took a little bit of trust in me to say, okay, can you watch my daughter who's already sleeping on the chair so I don't have to wake her up so I could go to the bathroom? But everybody was so happy to help, And where are they going? You're already on a plane, right? So nobody can really go anywhere.
Right.
But it's just people tend to be really helpful and kind during the holidays, especially, and it's okay to utilize that. So what are some things that you should definitely not leave at home? I would plan for and prepare for delays in travel, right? So lots of traffic if you're traveling by car, expect plane delays for weather, expect all sorts of things that might never happen, but you are prepared because you have extra snacks or small meals or drinks or diapers or whatever you might need that might make your trip easier and more pleasant. Make sure you have plenty of it. Okay. I would bring a couple of small little items for your kids to play with. If you have slightly older kids, a deck of cards would be great. Things that are easy to carry, but can give them hours of entertainment. And definitely if your children are anything like mine, they have a specific thing they need to sleep with. And I tried so hard when my kids were young to avoid this. And for a while I was successful, and my older daughter had a blankie, but it didn't have to be a specific blankie. It could be any blankie. And then eventually she had her favorite, and it was what it was. And now each of my children really do have a stuffed something that they prefer to sleep with. And the older children, it's their responsibility to remember to bring it, because if they didn't remember to bring it, we might remind them if we remember, but it's on them. For the baby, of course, it's now our responsibility, and we're the ones who are going to suffer if we forget it. So just do the best you can to remember, have a checklist of what you need to bring, and make sure that that's at the top of the list. And the problem with those things is that it's always your last thing that you're packing, because you need it the night before for them to sleep. And so make sure that that's going in your carry-on.
So a lot of our travel is actually in the car. And so we'll pack pillows. So that's when I stuff the stuffed animal or the blanket or whatever. I just stuff it in the pillow and throw it in the car.
Yeah, that's a great idea too. It's really, those are the things that are, I think, will set you up for really tough sleep if you don't have them. A stroller, I think even if you don't think you're going to need a stroller, bring it. There have been so many times that I wished I had a stroller. I thought, oh, well, we're even not traveling, like just in general, I think it's one of those things you just always have to have with you, because you never know when your kids are going to get tired, and they may get tired and want to sleep. Even your slightly older kids, they might want to sleep and they can fall asleep in a stroller, where if you don't have it, then you're looking for something for them.
Right.
And it's just, I think it tends to be a lifesaver. If you don't know if there's a crib where you're going, pack a pack and play. It will be your best friend. If you are traveling by car, stick one in the car, because it's definitely easy to have with you. And then even if it's not for sleep, they can play in there. If there's an animal where you're going, you know your kids are safe from that animal if you have a baby and you put them in a play yard. It's just easier to have than not to have. If you're traveling by plane and you don't want to have it there and there's a crib where you're going, by all means skip it. But I would say if you can, bring one.
So one of the things that I discovered this summer, and I wish I would have 5 years ago with my first, is, most of the time if you travel, and this is more so like if you're traveling to warmer places and you're not stuck in the snow like me and you are. But, most hotels have a pack and play. Call ahead, obviously find out if they have a pack and play there, or they call it a crib, but really it's a pack and play. And then you can actually travel with, it's like an outdoor play yard, and they've got some that have shades over them, because it really, like, that has freed up a lot of chasing around the toddler outside, if you guys are hanging outside or inside for that matter. And it kind of creates a barrier. So like you were saying, like pets, like if you're going somewhere with pets, well, if you bring that play yard, like you can throw in a bunch of toys in there and the toddlers and the babies can stay in there and be safe from the animals. Or they don't have a baby gate on the stairs, so you put the baby in the play yard. So there's just a lot of uses outside of just sleeping that I've found, especially if you get the outdoor, it's like an indoor-outdoor play yard that you can find, and it comes with shade. And it's just been a huge lifesaver and made everybody else a little bit more relaxed. You don't have to keep the eyes on the baby 110% of your time.
Yeah, we were on our last trip somewhere warm. Someone that we saw there had a play yard outside by the pool, and I thought it was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Too bad I didn't think about that 5 years ago, but we definitely summer. Hopefully we can get some more use out of it again. Yeah.
4 kids later, we're done with that. Thank God. But I did not benefit from that great tip, actually. So the information is really important to know where you're going, what they're going to have there, and what you need to bring. The other thing that's really nice to know, if you're traveling within the US and you don't want to travel with, all the diapers and wipes and creams and everything that you need for your baby, because it does tend to be cumbersome to travel with so much stuff. I have in the past just placed an Amazon Prime order and have it arrive wherever you're going, to your mom's, to the hotel, to wherever you are. And when you get there, everything you need that's disposable is already there, and you don't really have to bring it back with you, so it's kind of, it is a really great space saver and a time saver. I mean, you're almost always going to need this stuff, where you either forget something or you have to run out and go to the store. So if you can just know ahead of time what you need and send it there, it's so easy.
Yeah, especially like diapers, they take up so much room.
Yeah.
If you can just pack a couple that you need and then have some already there when you get there, or run by a store, while you're there, you don't have to worry about packing a zillion diapers.
Yeah.
And if they
And
take so much room.
just to know ahead of time, like what the car seat situation or booster seat situations are for where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
There are also like really inexpensive booster seats you can buy at Walmart or wherever. The company that I buy for travel is called, I don't remember, but I will pass along that information.
Yeah, we'll send out an email.
Oh, it's called Harmony. Sorry.
Harmony? Okay.
Yes, it's called Harmony, and it's so small and lightweight and easy to travel with, but it still meets the requirements that you need to meet. And I just find that I can even fit those in my suitcase. So for like 3 years plus, if you need a booster seat, those are great. And then, of course, don't forget your mommy wrap, because it will be very helpful with all the pockets and to hold your baby in. So,
yeah. So, and I'll touch on the mommy wrap. So I have a lot of clients that love wearing the mommy wrap, especially traveling, like when they're on the plane, because, you can just wrap your baby up, sitting there in the seat. You can, nurse and have like a little cover up already. You've got all the pockets to place your ID and your phone. You've got your pacifier clip, so you don't drop it on the plane or out the airport. But also you don't have to worry about, like, if your baby's in the stroller and you're pushing the baby around, and then all of a sudden you've got to wrap up the stroller and put it away. You're already wearing a carrier, that can help hold your baby. So it's just a great, baby or no baby, it's just a great travel accessory because of the pockets alone.
Yeah, I agree.
The other thing that I've done with the mommy wrap, and I just have to throw this out there for all the moms that are pumping still, is that I literally have sat next to a man on the plane with my mommy wrap, and I've been pumping next to him, and I had the freestyle pump that went in the pocket here. He had no idea that I was pumping the entire time that we were talking.
That's great.
Yeah, so it was pumping, talking to somebody with the garment covered, and it was pretty awesome experience to have said I pumped next to somebody on a plane, and
he didn't even know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then we're just going to touch a little bit about schedule changes when you travel, and this will have more of an effect if you're traveling outside your time zone, or if we are having later dinners and events that are not at a time that, or at a time that might interfere with nap time, or things that are just out of the ordinary. I mean, in general, all of this is out of the ordinary, right? You don't always have these big events every weekend, and holidays can be a little bit overwhelming. So again, the calmer you stay, the better it is. The more flexible you are, the easier it's going to be. It is okay to have temporary changes in your schedule, and your kids will adjust, okay? Their worst case scenario is they're tired and cranky, and that is okay, right? As long as that's okay with you. And just like we said, if that's not okay with you, do what you need to do to adjust, okay? But don't feel like their normal bedtime is 7 o'clock. I have to have them in bed at 7 o'clock. Otherwise, the world is gonna, end. And it doesn't have to be like that. It's okay if tonight they're gonna go to bed at 9 o'clock because dinner was at 6. So they will adjust, you will adjust. Just try to stay calm and prioritize whatever is most important to you at that moment. That's what you're going to do. And everybody else will just have to deal with it. Time changes are a little bit different. And I say, if you are going somewhere and there's just an hour time change, keep your kids on more or less as much of the same schedule as you can, because that's not a very big time difference. If you're traveling East Coast to West Coast and you have now a 3-hour time difference, it's not really possible to do that anymore. But you can really just try to slowly, if you can, adjust the time even before you travel. Try to put them to bed a little bit earlier, even just so that that difference is not as great. And then, if you travel, I travel overseas a lot. I have family that lives, where we have a 7-hour time difference. And I just think that the best way to prepare for that is mentally, and to know that when I get there, it might not be so bad because I time the flights in such a way that our kids, we leave at midnight, the kids are sleeping the whole flight, and then we arrive and it's nighttime. So when they're tired again, they can go to sleep. But coming back, it takes us sometimes up to 2 weeks to completely adjust to our schedule. And that's okay. We sort of have come to terms with that. We come to terms with that when we're booking our flights and when we're deciding to go. And again, for us, the priority is that time with family. And we have decided that that time with family is more important than those couple of weeks of tired and cranky children. But yeah.
So looking at the bigger picture, not just in the moment picture.
Yes. And then make sure you're taking care of yourself. If you are not taking care of yourself, there is no way you can take care of other people. Make sure you're well rested before your trip. Make sure that you are eating well, that you are hydrating, especially if you're nursing. These are things that we can easily forget to do when things are busy and we're going. We're planning, we're packing, we're, doing everything we can for everyone else. Make sure you take the time and do it for yourself too. And, honestly, if you're visiting family, and especially if you're visiting grandparents that don't live near you, they would probably die for a half hour with your kids without you around. So take advantage, pass them off, let them have their quality time, and go and rest or get a massage or do whatever it is that makes you happy, because I'm sure that the people that you're going to visit will be happy to do that for you and probably even for themselves. So, enjoy that time and try to let go of that control. It goes back to avoiding trying to control everything. When we see my parents, and it's not, we see my parents frequently, but not all the time. I don't question when my kids are there. I don't question what they've eaten. I don't question how much TV they may have watched. I'm so happy that my mom wants to watch the kids and that they're having a good time together. Whatever it is that they decide to do, they're in charge for that time, and it's important to be able to let go a little bit. And because what happens if you don't do that, if you don't really give them that sort of control when they're with your kids, is they don't want to be with your kids alone. And that's not good for your kids, and it's not good for you in the long run, so try to be able to let go and be flexible there and really take advantage of any time you get to be alone.
Yeah. I think one of the big things is, especially nursing moms, is just finding the time to eat, or just being able to sit down, right? Especially more than one. So like a lot of, when you say like relax for 30 minutes, to me, relaxing is being able to sit on a couch, have a glass of wine, and eat some food. That's relaxing if you're not having to run around and make sure that the kids are taken care of and this and that. And, like in my scenario, we've got cousins that are a little bit older than our kids, and they, the oldest is in 6th grade. I think that is just amazing because I give her responsibilities. Okay, you're on duty now. You get to watch my kids, and she enjoys it, So even not, insanely old, she's still old enough and responsible enough to watch my kids, and I enjoy it too because I get to relax.
Yeah, my oldest is sort of that go-to cousin, and she's turning 12, and she adores little kids and babies. And she's the oldest of 4, so she has lots of experience, and she has been known to change babies' diapers and feed them and give moms, my sisters, my cousins, a lot of reprieve when it comes to those gatherings, because she loves it and she feels like she's being so helpful. So definitely take advantage if you have cousins that are, or any kids, friends, kids, that are there. And, you could keep an eye. You don't have to blindly say, oh yeah, go take care of my kids if you don't feel comfortable, but they are more than capable. And usually the parents are pretty good at letting you know if they can be trusted or not too. I would never allow my daughter to take care of someone's baby if I didn't think she was capable.
Right. Yeah, we had a chat that just came in, and she had mentioned that she gets the feeling like that she is putting her kids off on other people, so she doesn't leave them with them that often. But and that's a good point, because sometimes you're like, well, I don't want you to have to deal with my kids, but maybe they want to. And like in my scenario, like I've got an aunt who won't come in and say, okay, I'm going to take your kids from you, let me help you. But she feels so important and so loved when I say, hey, watch my kids for a little bit. You're responsible for them while I take 30 minutes. And it makes her feel so good, and I mean, she's a great aunt to my kids, but it's just the little things like that maybe like I didn't realize back in the day because I was so
stressed.
Just like hovering over my first child. Now after having 3, anytime that I can get it, I'm like, please watch them. But
yeah, and I get that feeling, I understand that feeling of like, you don't want to be overbearing, and it certainly can happen, and not everybody wants to watch your kids, right? So, some people are more, willing and wanting than others, and you can have that conversation beforehand. If you're going to visit family and and they don't offer, you can say, hey, I'm just wondering before we even come, like, is this something you'd be interested in like doing, or do I need to think of other options? Because you are going to need a break. I mean, you need a break at home and you need a break when you travel. And if you're traveling with a spouse or a partner, take turns, right? I know it sounds so simple, but we forget sometimes. And especially if you're traveling with your partner and you're visiting their family, then you may feel like you need to be with the kids all the time because they're with their family, but that's not true, right?
Mm-hmm.
They need to be willing to give you that time also. And all of us crave and need adult time without kids, and you should not feel guilty when you feel that, and you should definitely seek it out and allow yourself to have that time no matter where you are. And so talk about it before you go. Talk to your partner and say, how are we going to handle this, because I'm going to need a break.
Yeah, so we my husband and I have, after a couple of years of doing this, have come up with the whole tag you're it. Okay, tag you're it. And then when we finally find somebody else that will watch all the kids, so we can be together and relax together. So neither one of us at that point in time are taking care of the kids. It's nice for us to get that time together with our family like it was before kids.
Yes.
So, I mean, even if it's a short amount of time, it's a long time to you when you're not with your kids,
Yeah. And guys, I promise, like, this is all temporary, right? Your kids are going to get older and be more self-sufficient. And, even as young as 3.5, they need so much less supervision. And so, it is a temporary thing, and it feels like it's lasting forever while you're going through it, but the time does go by really fast. And that's why I really say enjoy it now, because they do get bigger and they need us less. They still need us, but they need us less. And that certainly has its advantages, and it also has us sometimes feeling nostalgic. So enjoy the moments that you can now, and relish that time later too.
Okay, so now we're at our question and answer session time, whatever we want to call this. And this is the chance for all of our participants to submit their questions, and we will answer them. And I do have a couple of questions that have come in. So I'm going to start with these, and you guys can keep piling in the questions as we go as well. So one of the questions that came in is from a mom in Kansas. And she says that sugar is very tough for them at the holiday. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. What do you suggest to avoid meltdowns from not being able to give the sugar to them? Or what do you suggest for sugar highs when the kids are going crazy from eating too much sugar?
All right. So I think that just like as adults, we like to know what to expect. For kids, that's arguably even more important, right? Their coping skills are not as great as ours are. And I actually struggled with this just recently on Halloween because I did not do what I tell everybody to do. And I even said to my husband, we went trick-or-treating. My older children, they all know exactly what to expect when we go trick-or-treating. We bring home a bucket of candy, we go through it, and then you have maybe one, maybe two pieces, and the bucket goes up on the shelf. And then slowly over time, you can have candy like over the next couple of weeks, right? Well, my 3-year-old did not get that memo, and it was completely my fault. And as soon as we got home and she looked at her bucket of candy and asked me for a piece, now, of course, she could have a piece. I knew that we did not prepare her well for the fact that she could have a piece, right? Mm-hmm. And that she was not going to eat this whole bucket of candy right now.
Right.
And it's the same thing when you're traveling and you're, listen, one of the nice things about holidays is the dessert table, right? And it's an important part of the holidays in many families. And so just like as an adult, you're going to restrain yourself a little bit and you're not going to eat everything on the table. Your kids should not be able to eat everything on the table, especially if you know that sugar affects them in a way that's not favorable to them. And so ahead of time, you say, listen, this is what's going to be. This is what you're going to be allowed to have. You're only going to be allowed to have, one piece of cake, or you can choose 2 desserts, right? Depending on what's there. Or you could say you can have 1 dessert and as much fruit as you want. Okay. Those are ways that you can sort of let your kids still feel like they get to have, but that they're not going to overindulge. And you can make it contingent on the fact that they do have to eat a good dinner, right? You cannot have your dessert if you did not eat a good dinner. I think that's a fair rule for every home. And then, I would actually say how to deal with the sugar high is a really hard question, right? I would largely recommend to prevent the sugar high, especially if you already know your kids are not good with sugar. And depending on the age of your kids, tell them that. They don't, even if you have a 3-year-old, you can say, when you eat too much sugar, you get a bellyache. And so when the time comes, this is what I'm going to allow you to have. And that's why. And then when that time comes and they can only have 1 piece, you're going to remind them, remember we talked about this, and you're only going to have 1 piece because you're going to otherwise get a bellyache just like you did last time, or whatever it is. And they may have a tantrum, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just being proactive as opposed to reactive, just everything. And I know that it seemed like for my husband, he's just, everything is so mundane and repetitive, but I'm like, they're kids, you got to tell them what to expect. And I'll go into it saying, guess what? There's going to be a lot of cookies here, and just get excited. And you get to pick out 1 cookie.
Right.
Oh, I'm winning. I get to pick out 1 cookie, and so I kind of set things up like as an excitement, proactive type of expectance.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have another question that just came in. Any suggestions on how to get grandparents to not spoil a 2-year-old with candy? That's probably one that a lot of people struggle with. I noticed she's super cranky after having sugar, so we don't let her have it very often. I make exceptions around family, but no matter how many times we tell them, they just don't seem to understand that she can only have a little.
I suggest you have an alternative. So either bring yourself, right, a bunch of little trinkets, toys, whatever it is, that you think your child will enjoy, and give it to your parents and say, instead of giving them candy, can you give her this, right? Or tell your parents ahead of time, and I know you've done this already, but offer them that option. They want to spoil your kids. It's okay, right? Unless your parents are the primary caregivers for your kids when you're working, they should be able to spoil your kids, right? That's part of the fun of being a grandparent, and you're going to want to do it one day for your grandchildren. But it has to be within a certain, within your limits and your boundaries. And if you know that this does not affect your child in a positive way, you also don't want your child to have that association with their grandparents, right?
Right.
If every time grandma gives you lots of candy and you like it at that moment, but then you feel sick after, you're going to eventually associate seeing grandma with feeling sick after. And that's not good for anyone. And so what I would say is have, stickers and different things. Go to the dollar store and get those play. They have so many cute things for 2-year-olds that you could easily fit in a backpack. Bring them with you and then give them to your parents and say, instead of giving candy, fight the urge, give this, and listen, it takes sometimes saying things over and over and over again. My mother-in-law comes over twice a week, and she used to come and bring some sort of treat every time she came for an after-school snack. And eventually I was just like, they can't have this all the time. So she started bringing a vegetable platter, or, eventually they get it. And sometimes she still brings, munchkins, but it's not every single time.
So what do you think about like sugar-free candy?
I personally don't give my kids sugar-free candy. I just think, I don't know why, but I just don't love the idea. I myself, when I was pregnant, stopped having most of those not natural sweeteners. I mean, I guess if you're using a natural sweetener, it's fine. But I don't think they taste very good. And so I just don't use them. And I think that it still reinforces the same behavior, right? So if you're giving a sugar-free candy versus a sugar candy, your child is still learning the same thing. Mm-hmm. That when I see grandma, I'm going to get candy. And so it depends really on what your motivation is for not wanting to give it. I mean, I know that for, endocrinologists, for example, when they have diabetic children, they do recommend sugar-free snacks and sweets, and they recommend diet sodas and things like that. I just have not given them to my kids. I don't know. In general, I'm not very big on the artificial sweeteners, even though I don't require everything in my home to be organic or anything like that. I just want them to eat healthier. And for me, sugar-free candy, if they're going to eat candy, they may as well eat candy. And I just try to limit how much candy.
Okay. So we're almost running out of time. So I'm going to just ask, I've got several questions in here. I'm going to ask a couple more. And then if we didn't get to your question today, obviously you guys can contact either one of us. Sharon she's got a consulting company, and she is the expert here. So send her an email if you've got any questions. You're happy to send me emails for my opinion or my experience too. So the next question that we have is, what are your best tips for nursing stops when driving long distance?
For nursing stops, you said? I think my best tip would be to plan out your route ahead of time, and plan out the approximate timing of your stops and where the most convenient stops would be. We used to drive a lot, and just there's always those exits where you're driving 1.5 miles just to get anywhere, or those exits where something is right off the road. And so try to plan your trip in such a way where you're stopping right off the road and you're not taking yourself way out of the way to nurse. And to be honest, if you don't mind nursing in the car, it's not such a big deal. You just find somewhere, pull over and nurse. But it might be a nice break for you and for the driver to sort of get out if you're driving a while. And I would just do the best you can to anticipate around what time your child's going to want to eat. And if you get there and your child's not ready to eat yet, rest for a few minutes, have a snack, and then feed them. And I think that that's going to make it the least stressful for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm going to ask two more questions. One is, what kind of activities do you suggest to keep kids off screens? So I guess this would be a twofold question. One would be for like the older kids, 4, 5 and up, and then toddlers, the ones that are like 1 to 3.
Yeah. So I think that in general, we do use screens when we travel. We don't use screens the entire time of travel. So, I'm in New York, and for a while, New Jersey was my children's favorite state, because we always told them they couldn't watch anything until we get to New Jersey, which is about, it takes us about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic, to get there. And so for the first hour of the ride, they had to entertain themselves. I think for the older kids, having a game, card games are awesome. Uno is a great one. And even just using the environment, right? So we play I Spy, or 20 questions, like go back to the old school sort of games that you used to play in the car. And it is fun for them. Even though we may think it's boring, they really do love it. And it engages them in a different way. And for your little kids, similar things, right? So if you have a 3-year-old, you can practice colors, and you can, do all sorts of things, just even looking around, and what color is that car next to us, and what color is the sky? And those things can actually take up a lot of time. They get engaged in like really with the smallest things. So take the stuff that you do at home and just adapt it to the car or to wherever it is that you're traveling. Coloring is a really good thing if the kids don't get motion sick. So bring crayons and some paper and let them color. What else have we done in the car? I think those are probably the easiest things. And then honestly, if you have a long ride ahead of you, don't kill yourself, allow them some screen time. It's going to be easier for you and for them, and it breaks it up a little bit. And it's not, if you're giving them a dose of screen time on the ride, it's okay. It's not like you're just giving it to them for 7 hours.
Yeah, so we do a lot of singing in our car, a lot of singing, with and without radio. And then the other thing is like the sign game. We call it the sign game. So we have to point out, find an A on the next sign, find a B. And so, my older daughter has a lot of fun with that. So those are some activities that we do. The other thing, like for us, is kind of like the New Jersey situation is we will say, okay, like I'll get out this activity coloring first, or then you guys can read books for a little bit, or you guys can play Barbies for a little bit. And then, they're starting to get bored. Then we get out the screens, and it's not the first thing that we offer to them. Okay, last question that we have is, what can I do to help with reflux while traveling? So probably be with acid reflux.
Yeah, so in general, for babies with acid reflux, usually they're little babies. I usually recommend that you keep them upright after feeding. And it depends on really, some of it depends on if you're nursing or not. If you're nursing and your baby is having a hard time with reflux, you can even keep them more upright during a feeding, and that helps. I guess that also, it would help with a bottle-fed baby as well, but for nursing, depending on your supply and how forceful your supply is, it's a lot harder to control when you're nursing. So even keeping yourself upright helps minimize that quicker flow that can cause a little bit more reflux. And then making sure you are getting good burps out of them, and and just, I mean, if they're eating solids, then you can certainly give some solids surrounding the feedings, but most babies, by the time they're getting solids, they're outgrowing their reflux a little bit. If your baby is on medication for reflux, make sure you bring it with you, so that's something that you definitely don't want to forget. And then really just staying calm and doing the best you can. I mean, milk tends to help with reflux, and so sometimes the sign that your baby wants to feed all the time can be a sign of reflux, right? Because it does tend to help, but I would suggest, I think the best advice really is to keep the babies upright after feedings.
So, and that's obviously one of the reasons why I invented the mommy wrap, was because all of my babies had acid reflux and I had to keep them upright after every feeding for so long. And it also helped with burping them. Getting those good burps out always helped. So anytime that you guys have questions with acid reflux or nursing or any of that, Sharon is also a lactation consultant. She's a pediatric coach. She's a parenting coach. What else do you do? You do a lot.
I have a podcast if you want to listen. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions come up. And look forward to hearing from you guys.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you guys for coming, and Sharon, thank you so much for joining us today. And I know that we are very excited to launch a big webinar series in 2019 where we get to talk with Sharon a lot about all kinds of things that I know that all of our moms out there will want to hear. And so what makes us different is that you guys can submit your questions prior to our webinars and during our sessions. So feel free to let everybody know about these and fire away. So thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and happy holidays, everyone.
All right, thanks.